Our next question asks, how do you approach drinking as someone who wants to work in ministry? I'll give you the TLDR before we even begin. It's quite simply with a very loose hand. There are going to be seasons that it is permitted, yet you don't want to use that as license to then go and drink every day or get drunk. That would be sinful. But there are times that it's permitted, but you still want to be open-handed with it. There are going to be seasons and times that it is forbidden, and you want to be open-handed with it in that you're not going to rebel against what is forbidden, but rather you're going to submit to the authority that's there. There's two paths that you need to consider, and again, this is about somebody in ministry. There's two paths and parts that you need to consider, and this is actually for many things beyond just alcohol. The first one that you should consider is institutional policy. So we're talking if you're working for a church, a nonprofit ministry, a camp, a missions organization, if you are a sponsored or commissioned missionary. So let's say you're a journeyman for the IMB, or you're a college student on mission for Go Now Missions, or whatever in that capacity, or you're working for a BSM or a Christian Greek organization. Institutions, right? Broad umbrella for institutions. But listen, you're supposed to submit to their policies. Hebrews 13:17 says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account." And this next sentence is one that really kind of sticks on me, is let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. So if you're an employee or a volunteer leader within an organization and they have a policy, and you are constantly running against that policy or constantly rebelling against it, well, are they going to have to give an account for watching over you? Yes. However, they're not getting to lead you with joy. They're having to lead you with grumbling and groaning. And the scripture says, Hebrews 13:17, that would be of no advantage to you. Look, if you're going to work for or lead in or volunteer for an institution, you're going to need to submit to their authority and their decisions. That doesn't make them biblical. That makes them the institution's decisions that your role and job then is to honor, so that Christ is honored in your submission. It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. It matters that you are submissive. Okay, God doesn't honor rebellion. Remember that. So one thing, and so how do you approach drinking as someone who wants to work in ministry? With an open hand, submitting to the institution that it is that you are or are wanting to work for. And this also could extend to certain colleges and seminaries. Forbid students from participating in alcohol or tobacco in any capacity. Drinking is something that you will see in many policies or contracts in ministry. So again, you want to keep an open hand. I don't know that drinking is something that you want to die on the hill of. Oh, I disagree with them on that, so I'm not going to work there. If that's the case, I think we're dealing with something that doesn't have to do with drinking as a minister. And then the other thing that I would encourage you to consider is that those that we lead as ministers, we set an example for. And that's not a switch that turns on once you're in ministry. If you've felt and answered a call to ministry and you are on a pathway to working as a minister one day, then I think you begin to conduct yourself as a minister, because that's shaping your character, that's shaping your decision-making process. And when you begin day one as an official minister somewhere or as an official employee somewhere, you don't start with like day one, I've got the title, so now all of a sudden I've got this character. No. Either you show up at that job and you lack the character needed because you have not formed the decision-making process, and so it's going to be a tough go for a while, or you've started to conduct yourself in a right way so that now I've got the character developed that when the opportunity arises, I can keep going. We set an example for others as ministers. For Paul, especially in Corinthians, he talked about eating meat sacrificed at other temples, and I really lean kind of back into that one of Look, it is my responsibility, it is my job to consider the impact that this has on others before I engage in it. So, how do I approach drinking? I consider those that are around. I consider those that I lead. I consider those that I work for. If those that I work for, if those that are my employers say don't do it, then I don't do it. If those that I'm around, either it would cause them to stumble or they are opposed to it, or they feel like it would hinder the gospel, then I don't engage in it. I've died to myself. That's true for all Christians. That becomes more true for teachers and ministers. Look, James reminds us that teachers have a stronger judgment. So how do I approach drinking as someone who wants to work in ministry? With a very open hand that really keeps in mind that my life is about exalting Christ and removing the things that get in the way of people seeing him. And so to the extent that this is something that would get in the way of that, then I have to withdraw from it and I have to be okay with that.